Amy, quick reaction perhaps to what Michael Gove has been saying there. You dealt with counter-terror when you were in the Home Office. This is an area you know really well as a professional. What is he onto something here?
I think he is. So the last time when the prevent strategy was being updated and some kind of definition of extremism was being written down was in 2011. The world has obviously changed a great deal since then, not least with events being put in much greater sort of relief with everything that's happened since October the 7th and the attack on the Israeli music festival.
And you yourself dealt with terror attacks when you were in the Home Office?
Five, unfortunately.
Including the London Bridge attack?
Including the London Bridge attack, Westminster Bridge attack, Manchester Arena. So I think sort of Michael Gove is kind of onto something. As I say, the world's changed a great deal since 2011. I mean, sort of walking into this, God, no puns intended, but this kind of minefield at this stage in the political cycle feels a bit strange, not least given sort of
Rishi Sunak's speech the other week as well.
Tends to be quite some might say quite strident on this issue.
And actually it's interesting because Rishi Sunak making those remarks in Downing Street, Andy, a couple of weeks ago, a lot of people said, yeah, fair enough, great, but actually far too late.
Yeah, and I think the problem here is that the government has failed to grip this early enough, and I'm not sure anyone has. I don't think even the government have a really clear sense of what their strategy is here. It's obviously a complex situation. Clearly, you're trying to balance the fundamental right for people to protest and to express their views in a democracy, which is absolutely right, with making sure that people can't say and do extremist things on the streets of the capital and actually intimidate people and make people feel unsafe in their own home city and their own capital.
On that particular point, Andy, in regard to the man who was apparently arrested for his own safety for holding up...
I think this statement said only detained for his own safety.
Detained for his own safety.
So there is a difference there. Obviously, arrest implies that he himself was committing a crime. That is quite... I appreciate it's a nuance, but that's quite different. Detained for his own safety.
So they were taking him out of a situation that was
possibly going to become.
But nonetheless, that is sometimes what the police do, and the policing of these protests has been incredibly controversial. One WhatsApper says, Peter, the police should have defended his right to protest. Saying Hamas are terrorists is not controversial. Well, I don't think it's controversial at all. I think it's factual, but at the same time, it was controversial in the situation it was in. Anyway, this person says saying Hamas are terrorists is not controversial. It's fact. What the Met Police did was shameful and despicable with the so-called arrest. Well, we're hearing it's a detaining. Okay, so we're hearing, actually, Chris is correcting me, apparently it was an arrest. Do you know what? Send me everything the Metropolitan Police has sent out on this, and I'll read it out on air just so we're absolutely clear on this. Debbie's been in touch. She says, I'm so exasperated that the police arrest a man for the Hamas terrorist sign. He was not breaking the law. What on earth is going on in this country? The police are failing the British public. Innocent people are involved, failing to arrest the protesters, clearly breaking the law. Amy, what do you think of what the police have done here? Some say it's too softly in terms of their approach.
So look, I absolutely understand and my mistake for saying that detention was in fact an arrest. I'd understood it differently. I have some sympathy with the police in this circumstance. So Mark Rowley, who's head of the Metropolitan Police, was in front of a policing board earlier this week on Wednesday, and he said, look, I feel almost as if we're in an impossible situation. Either we're too woke or too fascist, or both at the same time. The police says first duty anywhere is protection of life. There were 2,300 police out on the street yesterday trying to in some way contain or maintain
at huge cost to the taxpayer.
At huge cost to the taxpayer to contain the protests which have been going on for several weeks now. So look, I don't mean to appear to be kind of an apologist for the police, and as I said, I entirely understand people's anger about the fact that yes, a man holding up a sign, entirely factual, as you yourself have said several times in the last 10 minutes about
and there are many, and people will see many signs which haven't been taken down saying
Which
very,
seems to be
very
pro-
offensive anti-Semitic things, is calling for
Look, we've got Lord
supporting
Mann,
terrorists.
Yeah, we've got Lord Mann, out today. The anti-Semitisms are saying, parts of London, Saturdays are essentially no go for Jewish people because of the pro-Palestinian protests, which is obviously.
There are some Jewish people on these protests,
shocking.
though. Do you think John Mann is right?
I'm not necessarily saying he's right. What I'm going back to is I think the police have had an almost impossible job when there are thousands of people out on the streets trying to balance, as I say, that protection of life and trying to keep things contained alongside people's right to freedom of speech and all of the right to gather and all of these kind of things. I do just in this circumstance feel the police are in a somewhat impossible situation.
Andy?
I think the no-go language is a little bit divisive. I mean, my partner's Jewish. I completely understand why.
There's been a lot of politicians who got into trouble over Paul Scully, for example, the former minister for London.
Yeah, I think he was clumsy. I think he also apologised for it.
He did.
But I just think that using language like no-go, that's very binary, I think it solves more problems causes more problems than it solves by kind of doubling down on the divisive nature of this. What we want to see is everybody feeling that they can express themselves and express their views, but also feel safe and not intimidated. I know that's a really difficult balance to strike, which is where I think Amy's right about the police having a very difficult job to do here. Yeah,
well, producer Chris is just handing me the Metropolitan Police statement. Let's get the facts on this. A video has been posted on X, formerly Twitter, says the Metropolitan Police, alleging officers arrested a man for having an anti-Hamas placard. The placard said that Hamas are terrorists. This isn't accurate, says the Metropolitan Police. He was arrested after an altercation was ongoing and officers intervened to prevent a breach of the peace. He was arrested for assault. Officers then fully reviewed footage provided of the incident and he was later de-arrested. The arrest was not made in relation to the placard. Lots of people getting in touch about that, but let me just read this again. Let's get the facts. Let's make sure it's true what we're saying. The Metropolitan Police saying a video has been posted on X, formerly Twitter, alleging officers arrested a man for having an anti-Hamas placard. This isn't accurate. He was arrested after an altercation was ongoing and officers intervened to prevent a breach of the peace. He was arrested for assault. Officers then fully reviewed the footage provided of the incident and he was later de-arrested. The arrest was not made in relation to the placard, but it just shows in so many of these situations how difficult this can be, how there are different allegations flying all over the place, and there's a lot of people who have been in touch on this as well, saying things that are true or not true, and there's so much about these protests that is controversial. There's so much about what the police want to do that is controversial. I've been talking about with Amy as well. And the fact that, I was reading an article in The Guardian, unsurprisingly, the other day from a Jewish person saying London is not a no-go zone for Jews. This is harmful rhetoric and doesn't reflect my experience, Andy.
Well, that's what I mean. It's saying that London is a no-go zone for Jews is speaking on behalf of every Jewish person living in London. I just don't think that's quite right. Having said that, the sentiment behind that I do understand, which is there are many people who on Saturdays when these protests are ongoing in central London do feel unsafe in their own city, and that's a problem.